All right, everybody, this is the video for Module 4, Lesson 1. This whole module is going to be dealing with decimals, so we're going to start off kind of easy today, and we're just going to model and relate decimal place value units to the thousandths place, okay? And this does kind of relate to our last unit because decimals technically are fractions, just written in a different way. So let's take a look at a place value chart right now, and we're going to draw one right in our notebook to see what we already know and then show what we're adding for 5th grade. So skip a couple lines. You're going to draw a line from one side of your notebook all the way over to the other one. And find the center of that line and go a little bit to the left, and you're going to put a decimal point. All right. Then draw a couple lines down to separate the decimal point from other place values that we're going to write in. And these lines don't have to go too far down, okay? We're not actually going to write anything underneath. All right, and the next thing we're going to look at is something you learned probably all the way back to 1st grade, and that is place value of whole numbers. So those are going to be to the left of the decimal, so I'm going to do the ones and tens only, but we know it keeps going all the way up to like billions, millions, all that stuff. So let's write in tens and ones, put a line in between those two. And then let's focus on what we learned last year. We learned that the first decimal place value, if you don't remember, you're going to remember now, to the right of the decimal is the tenths. We use that in money to represent dimes. And then you learn that there's another one to the right of that that's even smaller than tenths, and those are hundredths. And hundredths are spelled like the word hundred, but has a THS at the end. As a matter of fact, all of your decimal place values have a THS at the end. Just like when you say a fraction, tenths, hundredths. And the last one I'm going to squeeze in is a new one for 5th grade. I'm going to make it a different color. These are very small pieces. We don't even have a coin to represent this, which is why you never see a 3rd place value for money, but you do see it for things like on a stopwatch in the Olympics when they're doing races and we have to get down to the thousandths of a second because a lot of those racers end right around the same time, so they have to really figure out who won by going to the smallest part of a second that you can. And sometimes that would be the thousandths place. So it's the word thousand, the THS at the end. Now you're going to be seeing tenths, hundredths, and thousandths represented in different ways today. So one of the ways you're going to see it is what it looks like as a decimal, all right? So a decimal for tenths, we're just going to put a 0.1 for 1/10 above the tenths word. For hundredths, you're going to put 0.01 to represent 1/100th, or like 1 penny. This would be 1 dime. If you put a 0 next to it, it would be 10 cents, right? And then thousandths, if you just follow the pattern, it's going to be a 0 with a decimal point, a 0 in the tenths, a 0 in the hundredths, and 1,000th. Okay, we're going to have place value discs to represent that and things like that. Now, the thing with decimals is the denominator has to be very specific if we were to write these as a fraction. There's no halves, there's no thirds, there's no fourths. It's only tenths, hundredths, and thousandths because remember, all of our place value charts, like we learned in Unit 1, are 10 times greater place values than the ones next to them. So ones are 10 times less than tens. And the same thing goes over here. All right, this is 10 times more than this. This is 10 times more than this. If you go 2, it'd be 100 times more, right? Tenths to thousandths. But to show you the fraction form, really small up top if you can somewhere, we're just going to write 1/10 as a fraction, 1/100th as a fraction, and 1,000th as a fraction. So right there you have 3 different forms: word form, decimal form, and fraction form of each one of our decimal place values. So this will be a great reference for you when you're looking at your workbook pages today to represent different things. All right. So So one of the things I want to talk about today is place value discs. So you're going to see them on your homework tonight. You're also going to see hundreds charts, thousands charts, things like this, okay? But we're going to focus in on questions like this because there's a lot of writing. We got to figure out what do they want on all these lines, okay? So we're going to do one together right now to get that done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle, skip a couple lines, and we're going to write a 1 inside of it. And that circle with a 1 represents one whole, like $1, okay? Then you're going to draw an arrow. And then you're going to draw 10 circles, but you're going to do 5 on the top and 5 on the bottom. So I'm going to do 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. Go ahead and do that. And inside those circles, leave room to write, we're going to write that these are 1/10 a piece, like a dime. So I'm going to put 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, and I'm going to do that all the way to the end. I'm going to make mine a little bigger, don't erase. I just want to make sure you can see them better. You guys can catch up. I wrote mine a little too small. Instead of remaking the video, I think this will give you more time to write. There we go, that's better. All right. Then what you're going to do is you're going to write underneath it 1, 1, which you see right here, is blank times as much as 1/10. Okay. And by looking at this picture, you can tell that if you have 10 dimes, 10 tenths, that equals one whole. So we're going to write 10 times. And if you look up the place value chart, that's because we're one place value away, even though we're jumping over the decimal place value there. Another way you can show that is to write 1, 1, so write this down, equals blank times, we'll write it in unit form, which is when you write the number and the place value. So these are all 1/10. This is another way to write 1/10, just like we did here. And we're just going to put a 10 on the line again. Just showing us there's different ways to represent this. Another way you can do it is as a fraction. So let's do 1/10 this time, written in unit form, is, and we're going to write a fraction, so I'm going to do 2 boxes with a fraction line, as much as, I'm going to just squeeze it in down here, 1, 1. And because I'm looking at the tenths now, and they're smaller than ones, but going this way, instead of saying 10 times, it's going to be 1/10 as much, basically dividing by 10. And the last thing you're going to write is 1/10 equals blank times 1, 1. And you're going to write 1/10 again. All right, I'll let you guys catch up. Scooch this down a little bit. So this can be used on all of your questions today dealing with discs to show and relate place values that are next to each other on the place value chart. So just remember, if I'm looking at this place value and comparing it to hundredths, 10 of these make one of these. 10 of these make one of these, right? So if you have 10 dimes in your hand, like this, you could trade that out for $1 and you have the same amount of money. That's what that's showing. This can feel a little complicated, I understand, because you're probably writing and not thinking, but after we do a bunch in class, it'll make more sense. But if you're going back and rewatching this video to study, it should make a lot more sense at that point because we'll have a lot of practice in. So remember, notes are for later, not for now. If you don't really understand what's happening yet, we got a lot more practice coming in class. Now, I'm going to let you guys finish up your notes right there, but I'm going to show you one more thing. So I want you locked into the screen with your eyes right now, and I want you to look at tonight's homework, okay? Pretty much going to help you out with this. So if you see a 100 square like this with little tiny lines in it, that's actually a way you can represent thousands. Each one of these little boxes has 10 spaces in it. But because it's so small, what they did was they zoomed into one of them. That's what this is right here. And they said, okay, this little guy right here, this 100th, has one green spot shaded in it. So that little tiny green spot, if you look really, really closely at the tip of my finger, you could see it. It's green there, but it's so small they had to zoom in like a microscope. And that shaded area represents 1,000th because there's actually 1,000 of those in this. I actually really like this because up until this textbook came out, there was no really good way to show thousands because they're so small. But the computer was able to generate a picture where you can actually see all 1,000 pieces. You can even see the bigger unit squares. There's 100 of those, okay? And then we'll even see ones today in our workbooks that show us just tenths. And they actually just look like this if I were to pretend this was the one whole. But this is actually a smaller piece of this one whole. So for a letter A, you would write 1,000th. And then to express the shaded area in fraction form and decimal form, well, that's right there. Okay, so that's what you would write for that answer there. So I'm pretty much giving you the answers. You just have to remember and go back. But again, we're going to have practice with more of these in class, so it'll make more sense. For a question like this, we have a graduated cylinder. Okay, we've seen these in science. You could see that the whole thing is equal to 100th. So if there's 10 of them in there, these have to be thousandths as well. So all you got to do is count up how much liquid is filled up in there, how many thousandths is that, and write it as a fraction, and then write it as a decimal. So you're going to count up how many lines. That'll tell you thousandths because there's 10 of them in 100th, and then we'll go from there. And then this question right here is very similar to the one we did in our notes, but it has 100th and they're relating to thousandths. But most of these are going to be the same answers that we wrote in our notebook. All right, so again, this is a really hard video to do notes on and really understand without the pictures. So for that reason, your homework is in color today, which will help you see the different colors representing different size discs and things like that. So let's see how we do with it in class. Good luck, and ask questions if you need it.